Welcome to Health System CIO's interview with Dr. Christopher Longhurst, Chief Clinical and Innovation Officer and Associate Dean with UC San Diego Health and Executive Director of the Jacobs Center for Health Innovation, and Dr. Ryan Broderick, Associate Professor of Surgery for the Division of Minimally Invasive Surgery at UC San Diego Health. I'm Anthony Guerra, Founder and Editor-in-Chief. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
All right,
Thank
great.
you.
So we're going to talk about something fun today, which is the Apple Vision Pro. You guys are doing sort of the first U.S. clinical trials for spatial computing in the OR with it, which is probably about as cutting edge as you're going to get. But I'm going to start off, Chris, if you want to just give me a little bit about the organization and your role, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So I serve as the Chief Clinical and Innovation Officer for the health system at UC San Diego, and I'm a professor and associate dean in the School of Medicine. I also have the privilege of leading our Innovation Center, which was funded with a generous gift from Joan and Erwin Jacobs. And so all three of those roles are really synergistic because our goal is to help solve challenges in healthcare delivery through innovative technologies and the like. And so we're really delighted to partner with Dr. Broderick, Dr. Horgan, and the Center for Future of Surgery in this project.
Excellent. Very good. Ryan, a little bit about your role.
Yeah, so I'm an associate professor of surgery in Division of Minimally Invasive Surgery, and I do my research out of the Center for the Future of Surgery, which is located at the medical school at UC San Diego. And in that role, I have a background in biomedical engineering, so I like to think very innovatively, try to apply new technology to what we're doing in the operating room. And it's been great to have Chris as a collaborator on this project as we have been able to bring it to reality.
All right, very good. Let's get the overview, the 10,000-foot overview of what this is, what this project's all about. We'll get into how it came about. Again, I'm quite interested in governance as it comes to these things, and the process for something like this or things like this, which I'm assuming is physicians. With this one, it's not even they would have read about it being done somewhere else because you're the first one doing it. So somebody had the idea, read about the technology, and said, "Oh, let's try this here." So this is even more cutting edge than reading about it being done somewhere else. So from that, from the idea of a clinician or a surgeon who says this would be interesting, to that moving through the process of governance, IT eventually getting involved, and to the point we are today. But let's start with the overview of what exactly you're doing. Whoever wants to jump in there.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So when we do minimally invasive surgery, laparoscopic or robotic surgery, or even endoscopic, the image is that's from the small camera that's inserted into the body, whether for endoscopy through the mouth or through the anus, or if it's inserted through the abdomen or chest through small incisions in laparoscopic or robotic surgery. That image is then put through an image processor and up onto a computer monitor, a screen that allows the surgeon to do the operation itself. So as we get more and more equipment in the operating room, there's more and more video feeds. We have lots of different feeds and therefore lots of different monitors. The room tends to get a bit cluttered. But ultimately, as we got some of these Apple Vision headsets, a lot of the function really is just in using that as a monitor. You can make a digital screen that's as big as you want it to be, that sits in digital space, but it can be pinned to real world situations in your room or in the operating room. So we had the idea of, okay, well, we've got all this stuff in the operating room. What if we can distill that down into really this augmented reality headset where we create virtual monitors around the operating room that have the information that we need at our fingertips, that we can resize, we can move, and we can change the source to look at what we want to look at. So that's what we started looking at. And also, how does that impact not just patient care, but the surgeon? Is it comfortable to wear? Is it feasible to do at all? And how does the workflow of the operating room feel when we're kind of changing things like this in a way?
All right, let me back up a little bit, because you mentioned we got the headsets. I mean, I want to go before that to, again, somebody getting the idea, somebody reading about this particular device and thinking, oh, this might be interesting in the surgical suite. Can you take me a little bit through that?
Yeah, so Chris has actually worked with even the predicate devices or devices from other companies in the past as well. So you want to take a
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So, the announcement of the Apple Vision Pro earlier this year was certainly head turning. And there have been other AR, VR headsets. But one of the things that's special about what's been released is both the high definition screens. I think it's sort of next generation in terms of the resolution compared to some of the other headsets, as well as the specificity of the head tracking and motion tracking. And so that combined with the gestures that can be made in sort of a sterile field, make this sort of an obvious candidate for a lot of different use cases from a healthcare standpoint. So we previously have been announced as partners with a radiology vendor where we're testing out these headsets for reading three-dimensional scans. And Dr. Paul Murphy has been leading that work, and we've got some publications coming out soon. And then in parallel, Dr. Horgan and Dr. Broderick and others in the Division of Minimally Invasive Surgery recognize the opportunity to use this to address some of those challenges that surgeons feel in the operating room suite. As you'll hear about when you hear about our first dozen or so cases, there's some real wins here and real opportunities, and it's certainly turned heads even within our own institution, given that we're now generating interest from other proceduralists, from neurosurgery and ophthalmology to interventional pulmonology. And so I think that Dr. Broderick and his colleagues have certainly started a trend here.
Chris, do you know if Apple positioned this as something that could be work in the OR, or is this a case of a device they put out there and then people are going, wow, this could be really interesting in this environment because of the reasons Ryan said about all these screens. And I watched the video today on the device, and yes, you could see how you can create your own environment as opposed to having to live with what's there physically.
Yeah. So first of all, I would say Apple certainly did not position this as a medical device, right? And like other Apple devices, they're really looking at the software to be evaluated from a medical device standpoint. And so Dr. Broderick and his colleagues sort of homebrewed some software to make this work in our operating room environment as part of this research study. And we're also partnered with various vendors who we expect will be going through 510(k) clearance processes for apps that make this work in the healthcare environment. And so more to come in that space, but I think it is, really critical to recognize it's not the hardware itself that's the medical device, it's the software that we're using on it.
Let's talk a little bit about the process. I'm very interested in this, and I'm always, these conversations to me are to help other people, right? To help other people. So what is there's a million technologies, there's a million devices, things are coming out all the time. Could be a surgeon or could be any physician who says, I think this device would help me in my work. I could imagine this being useful and I would like to try it. What is the process for that getting, coming to fruition or eventually getting in front of IT, whether it's the CMIO or someone like yourself, Chris, and eventually the CIO? Eventually, we have to talk about security. We have to talk about integration, right? And these kind of things, all roads are supposed to lead to the EMR. So whatever this device is capturing, we would think we want to get it in there. So eventually the idea that comes from the user off a lot of times, who's probably a clinician, has to go through those governance processes to wind up. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so there certainly was that governance process. Once we have the idea, we come up with kind of a hypothesis or what we think we want to study by using this clinically. And there were a couple pathways that I went through in parallel. One is we knew we didn't want to trial this device in first cases on humans so that we could trial this in the lab, both in dry lab and then in wet labs, to ensure that this would work. And we did this over the course of multiple months where we would play with this, deal with the settings, set it up, make sure that we had the connections correct, make sure there's no latency in what we're seeing from imaging, because we want this to perform exactly as it's going to perform when we're doing on people, because what we care most about is the safety of our patients, right? So I went through the IACUC process, and for multiple months we kind of trialed that, and in parallel worked with our institutional review board, our IRB, that protects our patients and makes sure that we go through the correct processes as far as talking with the FDA about using these devices on people, making sure we consent our patients in the appropriate manner, and so that we can use them in real time and use them safely.
Chris, anything you want to add to that sort of that bubbling up and that going through the process and IT eventually coming in and checking things out?
Sure. Fundamentally, there's two ways to bring new devices into the organization. One is through sort of an innovation committee, and the perioperative services has one for that. And that's often used for things that have demonstrated evidence elsewhere, but are perhaps not yet FDA approved and necessary in one-off cases. The other is through, as Dr. Broderick described, the Institutional Review Board for Clinical Research. And in this case, we really agreed that doing this from a research standpoint was the right way to do it, because that allows us to rigorously evaluate, what the outcomes are. And as Ryan described, I think it's really important that before this was ever used, in humans, there was a lot of education and simulation in other models that allowed for the surgeons, by the time they're using it in a real case, to have that facility and agility with the device to make sure it wasn't going to slow down surgery or adversely affect it in any way. And so some of the outcomes that you'll hear Dr. Broderick evaluating are length of case and satisfaction. And also, really importantly, it's surgeon comfort. It turns out that minimally invasive surgeons like Dr. Broderick and Dr. Horgan, suffer some of the highest rates of ergonomic discomforts from twisted necks and back pain and other things because of the machinations they have to do while operating. And so I'm excited about this device, even if it doesn't improve patient outcomes, as a way of improving surgeon and proceduralist experience as well. And so lots of opportunities here, but we don't really know how these things work unless we do actually study them. And that's what's important about this being first, is that we don't know others that are actually studying this. And so the data that comes out will allow other health systems to make those decisions about should they bring this in as an innovation kind of device.
What would you say, Chris, is uh, the role of the CIO in something like this? Josh Glandorf is your CIO. What is the role of the CIO? The CIOs out there, what do we want to educate them about? We like to put them in a position to at least say, "Oh yeah, I heard of that," right? So we want them when
Absolutely.
they get approached by a surgeon 2 weeks from now, we want them to have listened to this and say, "Oh yeah, now I can, entertain this idea within, intelligently." So what's the role of the CIO in something like this?
Absolutely. Great question. So first of all, Josh is terrific, and he's a member of my team, and he's got a role in our innovation center as well. So this was certainly not a surprise to Josh or the IT team. Secondly, whether this comes in through the clinical research, direction, or the hospital operations direction, it's still going to need to be evaluated from a security, privacy standpoint. And certainly our teams work together to make that happen. And so as we move from a research kind of evaluation to considering, well, if this is showing meaningful outcomes, are we going to scale this? Are we going to make an investment on an ongoing basis? Are we providing all or some of our surgeons with these devices? How are we going to have highly reliable processes for supporting them, plugging them in? Because it won't be just Dr. Broderick and his team doing this type of support. The information services department will be critical for all of that. But the first step is really just understanding, is it worthwhile to have those discussions? Are there meaningful outcomes that we can achieve? I think of this as very similar to the discussions we're all having about artificial intelligence in healthcare. Everybody wants an AI-based solution and a shiny object, But the first question is really, is it helping you solve problems? And so a big shout out to Ryan and his teammates, because that's the question that they're fundamentally trying to answer right now.
And so where are you on that, Ryan? I mean, we know the discomfort. We talked about that, the multiple screens, the physical, the ergonomic issues that you have to deal with. You've used this Apple Vision Pro. What are your thoughts? Is it, I mean, are you saying, oh my God, this is unbelievable? Or are you saying I could see potential here, but we've got some refining to do? And I don't know if there's any conversations you can have with Apple. It's a sort of like a, hey, here's some feedback. I don't know. Maybe they don't pick up the phone. You just got to use it as it is. But anyway, you tell me.
Yeah, so I think this is a game changer. I think this is seeing is believing. Um, in the first cases when you put this on, the surgeon who is operating is like, oh my gosh, taken aback by the quality of the visualization, the comfort of where that digital screen is put in physical space, and it's mind blowing. So we really say seeing is believing, and we have multiple headsets that we can run at the same time now. And so that after a few cases, we had me and the fellow wearing it at the same time, and you know they hear me talking about, oh, how great this is and how awesome. And then when he goes to put the headset on and we do a case with him, he's again mind blown, just beside himself. He said, you can't even imagine how amazing this is until you get your head in it. So I think it's a game changer. We've done a dozen cases now. Um, I'll put together a couple minute video clip so you can kind of see how we set up the operating room and how we do this and kind of what the surgeon is seeing in their headset with the multiple video streams coming through and how we're doing cases. And we can link that to your website. So we've done a dozen cases. The patients have all done absolutely perfect. Um, Zero complications, zero concerns. Nobody has returned to the ER. Everybody's had a very good outcome in line with what we'd expect from our standard laparoscopic surgical practice. But what we're studying is how does the surgeon really feel when they're using this? What is our cognitive load? What is our physical load? We're using the NASA TLX score to kind of determine how important this might be in application to our practice. And we're seeing very high ratings from the 4 surgeons that have used it already. And we expect pretty big things. We're going to continue to use it. We are currently slated for up to 65 patients. We're planning to expand our IRB now that we're going to start incorporating ophthalmology and our interventional pulmonologists and our endoscopists, et cetera. So we're going to expand this out to see what kind of potential we have in other proceduralists. And also this is scratching the surface of capabilities, right? Right now it's just a digital monitor. There may be some role for being able to mark on the screen. So for better education for residents, for medical students. So you mark the planes of where we're going to do our dissection, that you could see that on their digital screen. The sky's the limit in this case. And as far as, talking with Apple, certainly they're aware of what's going on here and they put this out there for a lot of people to think about other sources and other things that they can do with it. So all this feedback kind of goes to people that are working in the medical field as well as Apple. Like Chris mentioned, I think there's going to be some work on the back end from multiple different companies now, looking to make app-based solutions to really streamline this to a broader audience.
It's wild. It's like a science fiction. It's coming really fast. So I wrote down a couple of things as you were talking. One is, are you getting to the point where you would prefer, almost to the sense that you don't want to do surgery without it?
I'd say it's too early to say that, but I will, every case that I do, I'm asking to use it. So
It's going to
it's
be a big difference, right?
a big difference.
So we're going to go quickly from trying it out to possibly saying, I prefer this. And it could also happen on the patient side. as they become more educated about it, you can go from someone saying, I will allow you to do this because you've explained it, to I want you to use this because you've said you like it better. I want you happier when you do my surgery. So use it,
100%.
please.
Anthony,
Yeah.
I'm not a surgeon, but I had the privilege of watching Dr. Broderick and his colleagues in one of these cases. And I can tell you that it's clear the difference between looking at, a virtual 150-inch screen that's right in your operating field and being able to see your hands and the operating field at the same time versus, looking at the 12-inch screen that's 45 degrees to your hard left. It's a far better experience for the
Mhm.
surgeons, as Dr. Broderick described. And so as a patient, I would want my surgeons
Yeah.
to have the best possible experience when they're operating on me.
Does it take a little bit to get used to, Ryan, or is it almost right away?
No, you get it right away. The monitor, the visualization of the surgical field is the same as what we would have. Like I said, we've gone
Mm.
through to make sure that this is very safe. It's the user interface that you get used to a little bit, just to how to grab and move the screen in space, and how to increase the size and that sort of thing. So just device settings really, that take very little time to get used to, but the rest is really just an improvement on the monitors, the visualization that we have.
And we know that there's competitive there's competition between health systems. It's certainly you have surgeons that practice at multiple hospitals, right? So this can become a competitive advantage. You could have a surgeon that says, I prefer to do my surgeries over here because they allow me to use something like this. Over here, they don't. Can you see this becoming a competitive advantage to be attractive to clinicians?
Yeah, very much so. But there's potential for that. And I think you could envision a world really where each surgeon is carrying around a small briefcase with their own Vision Pro or AR headset that suits them, that's calibrated to their vision, that's calibrated, that can then talk to your IT systems and make sure everything's above board and safe and protected, rather than having individual headsets in each room. I think this is going to end up becoming the new age doctor's briefcase.
Yeah, I would agree with Dr. Broderick, and he alluded to some of the opportunities moving forward. I think it's going to be beyond just education. I think, with these images being digitally processed on the way to this augmented kind of reality headset, we're going to see, vendors changing their hardware so that surgeons can see in 3 dimensions rather than just 2 dimensions. And I think that we can also introduce things from a safety standpoint to help provide those guardrails that you only see, for example, in robots today.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of excitement, and I do think solutions like this will be part of the future's briefcase. One note of caution I would say though is just like every doctor carries a stethoscope, but they're can be easily interchanged. These headsets are not easily interchanged. The eye tracking has to be configured for each individual using it. If you wear glasses, it's got to be preset up with the right optics inside of it, and so that is going to raise the bar in terms of showing outcomes that matter. Because before the health systems are investing in headsets like this for every proceduralist, we're really going to have to understand the difference that it makes because it adds to the cost of operating and providing care.
Absolutely. All right. So let me just ask you each one more question, and I think we'll have it pretty much covered. Um, what would be your best advice to someone in your position at a comparably sized health system across the country? And they're saying, wow, we want to try this out. We want to go forward with this. We want to experiment. What's your best advice, Ryan, to, again, someone in your position at another health system?
Yeah, first, congratulate all the forward-thinking folks out there. We try to be the tip of the spear at UCSD between JCHI and the Center for Future Surgery. So I really like all those forward-thinking, tip of the spear folks. So right now it is still under study. There's going to be stuff that'll need to be FDA reviewed and approved. If you're looking to do it in your own institution, go through those institutional review boards. If you can do it in a dry lab or wet lab setting, definitely get get that ball rolling. And then once you're feeling more comfortable, introduce it and make sure you're doing it with full consent process and with all the protections in place in the operating room.
Chris, what about you? What's your advice to one of your peers out there, if they're really intrigued and want to move along with this?
Yeah. Well, listen, we're the first in the US trialing this device in the operating room environment. There was a cardiologist, I think at Stanford, who used it in a cath lab environment. And I think we're going to see more of this coming. In the early days, which we're still in, they'll either be done under IRB or through innovation committees. And of course, we're happy to partner. But not all health systems have the resources to be able to do that sort of thing. And so, my advice to those that are eager but not resourced to do it would be just be patient, because Dr. Broderick and Dr. Horgan and colleagues will publish the results. And as those publications come out, that helps to move things from early innovation to standard practice. And we'll see more of that occurring, particularly as the vendors of the minimally invasive surgery devices get more involved as well. So it's a very exciting time, and between AI-based solutions and augmented reality glasses, I think that Dr. Broderick is leading the evolution of his field.
Well, that's wonderful, gentlemen. I appreciate your time so much today. I think people are going to be really intrigued and enjoy this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our privilege. Thank you, Anthony.